You do to that little girl, Rob?
I burned her.
What would you like to do with the whole world?
Burn it all.
Backdraft, Hollywood's fictional account of a deranged arsonist. But this weekend, Hollywood itself got torched by a real fire starter. The suspect nabbed on Monday, in court Wednesday, but with his arrest, bizarre and disturbing details. A strange relationship with his mother, a history of psychiatric and psychological problems. Did mental illness drive this man to a fiery rampage? Or is that just a smokescreen? I'm talking to one of the suspect's friends to get the answers. So again, the question, is mental illness to blame for the fires that had much of Los Angeles on edge? Take a look at this. Police say this is the man who terrorized Los Angeles for 4 days beginning the New Year holiday. Harry Burkhardt is a 24-year-old German national who has publicly said, F the United States. The work of federal and local police agencies in at least 2 countries helped bring him in. He is charged with 37 counts of arson, and more could be filed. A total of 52 fires were set in cars in the parking structures of Hollywood area apartments. Police say it is Burkhardt on the surveillance tapes. Here's where the case takes an even stranger turn. Burkhardt came to the United States on October 20th. He's accused by German officials of setting fire to a home there, owned by his family. His mother, who is in custody in this country, has immigration issues, possible gang ties, and fraud problems. She's accused of not paying a bill for breast implants. Burkhardt needed help to stand in court. There are unconfirmed reports that he has a history of mental illness and autism. And tonight, a doctor who knew Harry Burkhardt is on the record saying that Burkhardt was autistic and severely depressed and had PTSD. That was in 2010. This was confirmed by CNN. Joining me, Shlomo Eladi. He's a hairdresser who knows Harry Burkhardt. Dr. Soraya Bacchus, a psychiatrist, and Alan Duke is a reporter for CNN. Alan was in the courtroom when Burkhardt was arraigned today. Alan, do you think these kinds of impressions that these doctors allege would explain what you saw in court today?
Something has to explain what this behavior was. It's the most bizarre courtroom behavior I have ever seen in decades of covering high-profile cases. This guy is obviously under a lot of pressure. He could spend the rest of his life in prison, so very anxious. So he was just basically looking at the ceiling, his eyes closed, his mouth open, completely limp. 3 deputies had to hold him up during the entire hearing.
So it was like he was in a fugue state and he just sort of fell back into the chair?
Yes, but one of the deputies holding him up told me later that she thought he was faking it.
Oh, interesting. Now, questions about Burkhardt's mental state first surfaced 2 years ago when his mother was named in a court action. She, at that time, presented a letter from a doctor, again, a letter from a doctor, in order to prevent her son from testifying. It read, in part, quote, he is not mentally stable. Together with autism, he has severe anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and a sleeping condition. Shlomo, you knew him, right?
Of course. You know, especially hairstylist clients share with you detailed stuff.
Did he seem like somebody with mental illness? Did he seem in any way inappropriate? Or did he discuss with you any serious symptoms he was having?
Well, I cut his hair last week, and after the haircut, you talk about politics, we talk what's going on in the Middle East, always is curious what's going on there. I didn't see any sign, not of stress, no depression, no
he didn't
anger.
stand out as a client. He lived above you, right?
He lived above the salon, and I charge him $20 for the haircut, the way I charge for every other client. He come every 3 weeks till 1 month. And he lived with his mom.
He was just a normal, conversant guy. There was no signs or evidence of anything.
Complete normal, smiling, and also he tipped me $20, which is good tipper.
So he had bad judgment in his tipping, and so no, okay.
Well, you know.
Good judgment, I guess it is. Dr. Bacchus, I want to go out to you. Help us explain this. There's all sorts of. Here's how I want to frame the question to you, because you're going to have to make sense of this for us. Number one, I have 2 questions. One is, let's go to this one first. Is it surprising to you that someone who's capable of these kinds of behavior could come for a haircut every 3 weeks and no one notice anything unusual about him?
No, not at all. I mean, it's very typical when you have these kinds of disorders or mental illness to be very normal and functioning where nobody would notice anything, generally speaking, not in day-to-day kinds of activities.
Okay, then the other question I have is that the word autism has come up here. And by the way, my understanding is that one of the doctors who made this diagnosis did so without applying any objective measures of this. both for the PTSD, the depression, and the autism, and was an obstetrician and was doing it to help with immigration issues. So all that is very suspect in my mind. But my question
Is there
to you, Dr. Bach,
anything
about autism that is associated with these sorts of behaviors, and isn't it potentially hurtful to families and people who have autistic spectrum disorders to sort of throw that word around when it comes to behaviors like this?
Yes, I mean, generally people who have autism, they're pretty socially isolated. They're not real sophisticated in performing these kinds of behaviors or being involved with them. Maybe possibly Asperger's syndrome, or maybe another primary process kind of psychiatric disorder like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, or maybe some real serious characterological issue like a personality disorder.
Alan, you have had, if you're willing to share with us, a very
Sure.
personal experience with this, and you and I talked about this before the show, that the issue of autism coming up here, I think, is very unfair.
Yes, having a child that was diagnosed when she was 12 with Asperger's syndrome, I can tell you that when something like this is in the news, and it happens occasionally, it makes any parent of a child diagnosed that way really upset to think that people will look at their child as being a potential terrorist. So
Yeah.
it is a very difficult thing.
And by the same token, Dr. Bacchus, we're throwing the word schizophrenia around. Not all schizophrenics engage in violent or inappropriate behavior. So we don't want to say that because someone has we're not saying because somebody ends up with a specific diagnosis, this would be a typical sort of a behavior for someone with one of these diagnoses.
Fire setting is something you can see in a lot of psychiatric illnesses, not just bipolar disorder, or not just autistic disorder, or somebody who's just a plain pyromaniac. That's a pretty rare disorder in itself.
And for those of us that don't have don't have a predilection for lighting fires, can you help us understand? Are there any theories about what the psychological motivation is, or what the individual is experiencing who is an arsonist?
Arson is a little different from somebody who might be enjoying it sets fires. Setting fires is an impulsive disorder where there's an actual arousal or excitation and a fascination with setting the fires and watching them grow and seeing the damage that they can cause. It's a little different when you're talking about an arsonist who's maybe doing this for revenge purposes or for fraud purposes, a true criminal act where there's a complete difference in setting the fire with a very different motive.
And we're going to actually, in the next segment, talk about terror and hate and how those things can even figure into this. But Shlomo, I'm going to go to you. This guy sat in your chair every couple weeks. He was a guy you knew. You knew his mom, who was the massage therapist upstairs, and she had some, apparently, the thought is that maybe the issues that she was having with her immigration may have set him over the edge. That does not fit for me, by the way. Does it fit for you?
Well, I'm not seeing any reason also to do what he did, but his mom, she was very important for him.
Very important for him.
Very important for him. And he get upset because the immigration issue.
Well, she had kind of a nefarious past. Listen, and apparently her address was associated in that apartment that Harry was living and shared with his mother, linked with nearly a dozen erotic ads posted online, some of which read, "Would you like to be sensually pampered by a professional, sexy, attractive?" I'm reading the quote here. And real sensual tantra master and a doctor of sexologist, which is not true, right? That's a specific degree. I invite you for an extremely pleasurable full body massage. So it goes. There's a full screen of it. Something was going on there with her already. I'm just saying, it's sort of a nefarious situation. Were you aware that was going on upstairs?
No comment on this issue. I know her as a wonderful person. I see her almost every day. I see her in the parking. I see her driving the car.
Do you think her issues with immigration set him off?
Yes.
You do? So
yes.
Was he talking to you about that stuff?
Yes, it was bother him. Then all of a sudden he heard that his mom will be close to him. So
he was very upset.
Yes.
Is there anything about the way he was talking or the kinds of things he was talking about that would trigger him to take action against the community? Like to really act out the way he did?
Well, I'm not seeing that this is the reason to do that.
He didn't say anything that sort of connected the dots for you?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Well, guys, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Shlomo. And Dr. Backus, thank you so much. For 4 nights, Los Angeles residents lived in fear. If you were here during that, or particularly if you lived in Hollywood, West Hollywood, it was not a fun time. Next, when an arsonist is on the loose, it can really affect an entire community. And we're going to talk about the legal aspects of this when we come back.
Jumped up and we just ran downstairs. I grabbed whatever I could grab, my purse, my wallet, shoes, and a sweatshirt, ran outside, and I saw the building was on fire.
It was crazy. I mean, the flames had basically kind of started to make a C shape.